Hello, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk, joined by Paul Dottino. Thank you for being with us, everybody. Talking Giants football with you and taking your calls at 201-939-4513. We're going to have Oregon's sideline reporter, Dusty Harrow, with us in a little bit to talk about Oregon prospects. And, Paul, we're going to have to do just like one question on each guy because there's I'm being serious. There's probably at least 10 players. Well, let me see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'd say 9 players that'll go in the top 3 or 4 rounds of this draft. Like, it's a long, long list of very good players that are going to be drafted this year. I mean, Oregon's been one of the better teams in college football the last 2 years, and we're seeing why with this year's draft class.
I had 8 guys that I wanted to ask him about, and, because, quite frankly, I was trying to be somewhat conservative. I didn't want to use up 45 minutes with the guy.
Who are you leaving? Oh, yeah. No, I'm curious. Who are you?
I left Jeffrey Bassa off.
Bassa, I think, is a pretty good inside linebacker.
I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think the Giants are going to be interested.
No, probably not.
So, he's the one I left off.
I do wonder if inside linebacker is a quiet need for the Giants. Micah McFadden's coming up on the end of his rookie deal. Okerike's more than halfway through his contract. I wonder if trying to get a little bit of depth, and they don't really have a young developmental player at inside. They have Musa from last year. So I would not be shocked if inside linebacker was like a late developmental guy that could help on specials and maybe develop into an inside linebacker type of play here.
A late third-day flyer, so to speak.
I would say 5th round and later.
Okay, I could see that. I just, in my own mind, I figured, look, we only have so much time with this guy, so I eliminated the inside backer.
Yes, and we will have him in just a moment. Paul sent me a good text last night. The rule suggestion proposal by the Lions to eliminate the automatic first down from the all defensive holding, the illegal contact penalties, that got voted down, correct? Not just tabled, that was voted down. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. As all the other NFL teams, so the Lions, you guys committed the most of these penalties, so maybe we shouldn't do you guys a huge favor here. So that went there. There was a little piece of news, Paul, I guess we can get to very quickly before we get Dusty up here. There was a trade.
There was in the division.
And
I know.
Charlie, if you want to call today, you can.
Yeah. Look, I'm sure he's already got us ready on speed dial.
I think he already called once this week, though, so I'm giving him leeway to call a second time. Because, look, he's been in on this, so he has the right to call in and talk about it.
Yes. Did you see the price, though?
It's not high at all.
No, it was like nothing.
Which is why I don't think it's going to be as acrimonious with Charlie as we thought. So the Cowboys send a 5th-round pick to the Patriots for Joe Milton and a 7th-round pick. So basically the Cowboys slid down, 60 picks, 50 picks, something like that. And they get Joe Milton. They needed a backup quarterback. Now they got one. So I think it's a trade that made sense for Dallas. And like we tried to explain to people over the course of the last 2 months, NFL teams are not going to completely change their draft evaluation on a player based on one NFL game at the end of the year against backups.
Correct. And I will say this. The comment that came out of New England that I saw, they signed Hobbs. Okay, Dobbs.
Dobbs.
They signed Dobbs.
Nate Hobbs, the quarterback? I know. and he did not go to New England either, which may be...
How about Roy Hobbs?
I was thinking of Roy, exactly. They signed Dobbs. And the story that I saw today said that when they signed him, they told him he would definitely be the 2 and that they were going to trade Milton.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, as we discussed for many months here, especially because Charlie brought it up like every other phone call, Milton was indeed being dangled around the league for anybody to make an offer.
And I had heard that a friend of a friend who knows someone in the Patriot front office, so it was not something I was ever going to source, but something that I had heard on the side.
Yes.
Was that 5th round was going to be the sweet spot for it. I was taken aback by that. I'm a little surprised because I thought, if they're only getting a 5, why wouldn't you just hold on to him? But the whole Josh Dobbs thing and promising the backup job, maybe that would give the explanation for it then, which I thought was interesting. All right, so let's get to our guest today, talking some Oregon Duck prospects. We're joined by Dusty Harrow. He's the Oregon sideline reporter for the Fan 1080 in Portland. Dusty, you got John Schmelk and Paul Dottino here in East Rutherford, New Jersey at the Giants practice facility. Hope you are doing well, man. Thanks for being with us.
Look, it's not raining in Portland right now, so everything is good. Life is good right now. We have a little bit of sunshine poking through, so everything's great.
It rained here this morning.
It did, and last night. That's for sure. And, Dusty, I was commenting to Paul. We had our Alabama guest on yesterday, and we were commenting about how it's a much smaller group from Alabama than usual. Well, this is easily the largest group from Oregon that we've dealt with, where we probably have 10 draftable players here. I'm not sure we'll get to all of them with you, but we'll get to as many as we can. I want to start with Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle. I watched him 2 days ago, and, man, he was impressive. Transfer out of Michigan State. His numbers just ballooned and catapulted the moment he got to Oregon from Michigan State. Just a really good two-way defensive tackle. He can stop the run, get upfield. What was your experience covering Derek the 1 year he was there, and what would you tell NFL fans about him that maybe haven't seen him play?
Look, Derek Harmon, in my opinion, and look, it's going to be biased. I worked the sidelines, and I got a chance to see him up close and personal all season long. But I feel like he was one of the most undervalued and underappreciated interior defensive linemen in the country this past year. You look at his stats, and his stats won't wow you. His measurables, I mean, he is 6'5" and 310, but he doesn't wow you. But it's everything about Derek Harmon that is the person and the player that it really pops, including like his size at 6'5", 310 pounds. It's a standard size, right? He's big, but he isn't like, wow, but you go and you shake his hand, and it's honestly like holding a 15-pound weight in your hand. He's just got these big hooks for hands, and your hand goes down, and you're like, whoa. And then it's not making the plays and all these tackles and racking up big numbers, but it's when he makes them, right? You go back to the Ohio State game in Eugene where the Ducks won, and Ohio State has all the momentum in the world. They're marching down the field, and Derek Harmon pops in the middle and scrapes down the line of scrimmage, forces a fumble, and that turned the tides of the game, gave Oregon's offense all the momentum in the world, and that ended up being a one-point game. It's the making plays for other guys, occupying two offensive linemen with ease and manipulating where they go to open up a lane for linebackers to fill. He is a smart, a headsy player, and I think that everything that he did over the course of the year, it was game-changing for Oregon. I mean, make no mistake that 13-0, it happened on the back of Derek Harmon canceling the middle of the offensive line throughout the entire Big Ten schedule. He is a phenomenal player. He's a good young man too, from Detroit. Went to Michigan State, came out to Oregon, and he was open for everything. All the coaches raved about him and his coachability. But for me, everything about Derek Harmon is the intangibles for him.
Yeah, I see him in that next group after Mason Graham, in the next group of really terrific three-technique defensive tackles, because that's what I would play him at. I know he's got some versatility to his game, but I would play him at the three-technique in the pros. His toolbox, his variety of moves, his get-off at the snap, all very impressive for a man of his size. But I would make him a three-technique, and I know he can do more than that. I understand the versatility. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do. I think playing him in a three-tech would be probably in his best interest, and it's because of, he doesn't have, straight line speed, but he is quick off the ball, and his hands, the heavy hands that he has, man, it is hard to get claws on him, and so he creates a lot of separation, and his bag is pretty deep in that regard of his moves that he can create with. So I think you're right in that, in playing him in a three is probably where he sits. But, when I'm talking about underrated, undervalued, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, also Big Ten guys. So, that's why you see Derek Harmon getting bumped down to all Big Ten voting. It's really hard when you have these super conferences now, and there's Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham in front of you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, I think for all those reasons we just talked about, I don't think Derek Harmon's getting to the Giants at 34.
No.
I think he's going to be picked in the late teens and early 20s. I think underrated based on where he is. So let's go to the next guy. Another guy I'm a big fan of, Josh Connerly Jr. And I had a chance to talk to Josh down there at the Senior Bowl. Dusty, it was after that one unfortunate rep he had against Mike Green, where Green caught him with both his feet off the ground when he was trying to short set him, and he put him on his back. And look, that's going to happen. And I talked to him that afternoon after the rep, and I could tell he was still still really annoyed about it because I'm sure he saw the social media stuff that afternoon after he got off the practice field. And, we had a really good conversation. I basically said, look, dude, it's one rep. Who cares? Like, it happens. Like, what are you going to do? And we had a good conversation. And then I watched him, more of his stuff on tape. He is just such a smooth mover, man. I think maybe he can get a little stronger. He's only 305 pounds or about 310. But, man, he has really good feet, and I think he is a really high floor as an offensive tackle. What was your experience watching Josh in his long career at Oregon?
Look, Josh came in, and that week at the Senior Bowl kind of epitomizes what Josh Connolly is, right? Early in the practices, he gets one bad rep, it goes viral, and there's every opportunity in the world for a guy to shut down. That's just not who he is. He ended up being voted on by his teammates, actually by the defensive players, as the best lineman that week at the Senior Bowl. And that's who Josh Connolly is. He came in as a 5-star recruit and very highly touted out of Rainier Beach up in Seattle area. And what ended up happening, he ended up coming down, in the offensive line staff raved about him. Mike Cavanaugh, who's a longtime offensive line coach, he's been at Oregon State, Syracuse, Nebraska. He's been everywhere. He said, this Connolly kid is a sponge, and he raved about him. He's coached and developed a lot of great offensive linemen in his time, and Coach Cav said he's the best. He's the best because he has all of the physical tools, but it's the mental side of the game that Josh Connolly really wants to excel at, and he wants to be a better football player, and there's no resting on his laurels. There's no buying into the hype that he was the number one offensive tackle in his recruiting class. He came to work from day one, and that's kind of always been his process. He's a grinder, he's a worker. You mentioned that he was still irritated about one rep in a practice where he had a lot of them, and he was really good on all of them, but it's that one rep that kind of bothers him. His fluidity and his movement, I mean, you can tell that he was a basketball player growing up because he moves like one, and he's got great feet. And you're right, maybe put a little bit more lead in the pencil there and gain a little bit more weight. But Josh Connolly was as advertised when he came into the University of Oregon as a 5-star recruit, came in day one, was willing to sit. He's kind of been willing to rotate and move different sides of the line, but he has found his spot, and he was an anchor for this Oregon team, and he is a special, special player because it's feet and hands.
I think I really like him as well, but I think for him he's going to be a better pro. Because I think when his body matures and he puts on more bulk and more power, to me, that's his missing component. I thought there were too many times he got muscled, but he had all the other stuff. So when he gets bigger and stronger, I think he's going to be a terrific pro. I really do. All right, I want to go to defense real quick because I know we don't have a ton of time here. Jordan Burch, speed rusher, and a guy who's probably going to go in the second day and is going to be a really good value as an edge guy.
Yeah, Jordan Burch is a South Carolina transfer. He came in, and everybody thought he was going to kind of maybe be a one-and-done guy at Oregon, but he stuck around for a second year, and his tool set is big. I mean, one thing that sticks out to me about Jordan Burch is physically, he is the guy that you look at and you want him to be first guy off the bus because he is looks like he is cut from stone. Yeah. It doesn't look like there's an ounce of fat on him. And the measurables all live up to it. But there's one game that really sticks out to me, and I can't remember if it was I think the Giants had a bye week, but Kayvon Thibodeau was at the UCLA game when Oregon played UCLA down in the Rose Bowl, and it was the very first Big Ten game. Kayvon Thibodeau was coaching Jordan Burch from the sideline. Every single snap. Yeah, he was yelling at him every time he'd come off the field. He'd be like, hey, you got to long arm him. Hey, you got to go underneath him here. Those two guys, and they didn't play together, but they connected really quickly. And that was a special game just to kind of see the interactions of Kayvon sitting there on the sideline yelling at Jordan. As the offensive lineman is getting in his set, he's like, pass, long arm him. And it was one of those things where those two guys kind of connected.
That's pretty cool.
And you saw like the pro that Kayvon has turned into, and that maturity is starting to grow. You saw that feeding off onto Jordan Burch, and from that game on, Jordan Burch kind of took everything that I don't know how long they talked, but whatever it was, it may have just been during that game. He took something from that toolkit that Kayvon was sending him from the sideline, and
Real quick,
he became
Dusty,
a different player.
One thing that does bother me about him, though, and I have a real thorn in my side, and this has been for years and years and years, these edge rushing, pass rushing guys who don't really concentrate on also playing the run. I see Burch as a terrific defensive end with his hand in the dirt pass rusher. But against the run, he doesn't show enough interest for me. And that doesn't mean he can't be a great situational player in the pros. But if
he's a big dude, though, Paul. He's 295 pounds.
But he doesn't. I don't think he shows enough interest playing the run. If he does that, then he can be a full-time player for me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of most pass rushers that are coming out, right? Is that
it happens a lot.
They fall in love with the sack numbers and turning that corner and getting to the quarterback. But I think that comes with, once you get into the pros, the way that you stay on the field is by defending the run and using that big frame that he has. And I think that's one of the big upsides that he has. He has the ability with his size to be a guy who can become run support.
Sure.
And you can kind of move him around, and he doesn't just have to be on the edge. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that. I think that's a common concern, as you said, with a lot of these edge rushers coming out of the college game.
All right, one of my guys that I think I like more than other people in this draft, he might be my tight end number 4 when all is said and done, maybe even 3, and that's Terrence Ferguson. I think he's just a really smooth mover. He's got good size at 6'5", 250. Why do you think maybe the production didn't necessarily meet some of the great skill set when I watched him on tape? And why do you think he might have more success in the pros that he had in college?
I think with T-Ferg is that guy is team first with everything that he does. And I think that the coordinator changes that he went through in his time at Oregon, I mean, he got Will Stein for 2 years, right? The last 2 years he's had Will Stein as his offensive coordinator, and you saw his numbers and his production pop.
Yeah.
And one thing about Mr. Consistency that is T-Ferg is that he garnered a lot of eyes and attention early in his career because of his ability as a pass catcher. And so there weren't a lot of the blazing receivers. Tez Johnson didn't come around until 2 years ago. And so they were looking for a game-breaking receiver, and it was kind of, all right, keep an eye on where the tight end is at all times. And that, I think as he has grown and he had 2 years with Will Stein and the system kind of started to fit, and then they got a couple of receivers in Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden to keep a defense honest, his numbers really started to pop. And he ended up leaving. Like, that's the thing with Mr. Consistency. T-Ferg, old reliable, was a guy that he ends up leaving Oregon with all of the tight end receiving records.
Oh, does he really?
And,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, and that was something where, it may surprise a lot of people. The school that has produced, Russ Francis and a lot of steady and really good tight ends in the NFL. Terrence Ferguson left U of O with the catches and I think touchdown catches and receptions and yards for tight ends. So he is a really good, polished receiving tight end, but he is a guy that blocking is one thing that I don't think he got enough credit for. But when he gets to the next level, we all know that you got to be able to mix it up, because there's very few Travis Kelce's out there that can get away with just being the go-to receiving tight end. But T-Ferg is a guy that he can block and he'll mix it up, and he's not afraid to do it. He was a great guy to have around, a good locker room guy as well.
All right, you mentioned a guy's name during that answer, and you also mentioned Jordan Burch is the first guy you want coming off the bus. Well, there's another guy coming off the bus that you might not even notice because he's standing between two much larger gentlemen, and he might just be too small, and you can't see him standing between the other big guys, and that's Tez Johnson, the wide receiver. And look, I don't have his combine measurements in front of me, but I believe it was like 5'9", 155, something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a Tez Johnson believer. I watch the tape. He's open all the time. I was at the Senior Bowl. Nobody could cover him. We do these quick-hitting interviews at the Senior Bowl, and I was given Tez Johnson, and I was supposed to do 5 minutes with him. We sat there for 16 minutes. He was such a good interview. What a good, smart, thoughtful kid about football. He's going to figure out a way to make it. Why do you think he can do it, despite the fact he's coming in as a player that's significantly smaller than my producer who's running the board for this show right across from me right now?
Yeah, because it's hard to hit what you can't touch, right?
Yeah, that's a great saying.
That's Tez right there, man. And he did not run a good 40, and he is not a good 40-yard dash runner. But when you look at his 10-yard sprints or splits, when you look at his 3-cone shuttle, where he is quick as lightning, man, and that is what the separator is with Tez. The other thing is you mentioned how thoughtful he is and what a great interview. He's a smart kid, and he is very football smart, has a ridiculously high football IQ. So the great advantage that offenses have is that you know where you're going, and you can get a tell on a defense. And that's one of the things that's a separator for him, and always has been, because size has never been his advantage. He's always been a guy that you have to have every single advantage between the ears that you can create, and he does that. Outside of that, he had a quote to me after a game this year where he made 2 guys miss right away, and then he made an incredible jump cut to kind of spring a big run. And I said, take me through that process and that play. And he goes, well, to be honest, I catch the ball and I look for the 3rd guy because the first 2 aren't going to touch me.
Okay.
Wow.
That's kind of how he operates.
Sweet.
He has this ability to kind of, once he gets the ball, he knows where everybody's at, because pre-snap, he knows kind of where the first 2 guys are going to be coming from. So his eyes go to number 3. And if he can make number 3 miss, it's going to be a big gain. But he's also smart enough, because he knows the 3rd guy is the guy that's going to clean him up, right? That's going to be the guy who's going to be able to deliver the big hit on you, because you're so worried about the first 2 guys and where they're at. So he looks for the 3rd guy. If the 3rd guy is going to get him, he'll just fall down. He'll take the yards that he gets. He's not going to get hurt. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why he's got a chance to make it in the NFL. It's going to be tough. He's small. He's undersized. But he is wickedly smart, and he has got great hands and a great route runner.
Speaking of undersized, Jordan James plays with much more ferocity, desire, toughness than his 5'9" height will indicate.
Honestly, he reminds me of Bucky Irving last year. He reminds me a lot of Bucky Irving.
So it doesn't have breakaway speed. So usually a guy who's going to be that diminutive, they want more speed out of him. But he is a tough runner.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy, and you mentioned Bucky. Bucky was kind of that bowling ball. And, look, I think those 2 playing together, it unlocked a lot for Jordan, just kind of that ability to run behind your pads and know who you are and have that awareness. But the biggest strides that we've seen with Jordan James, which I think will serve him well as he moves on to the next level, and a guy that, if you don't have that blazing speed and you're not the explosive back, you've got to have all of the tools. And he grew as a receiver tremendously over his time at Oregon. His numbers aren't eye-popping as a receiving running back, but his hands were reliable, and he became a guy that you could keep on the field longer because of that. He is between the tackles. It'll be interesting to see at the next level, right? Because of how quick everything disappears. And he has really good patience, but he's not a slow reactor. He can find the hole and commit to it. And I think that was kind of where things really started unlocking for him this year. Is, he would slide down the line a little bit, wait, and have almost too much patience. About week 3, that all changed, and he put his foot in the ground, and he was committing the yards. And I think that's where he's going to be in the NFL, and it's not going to be a power back, but it's going to be a utility back that he'll be in the next level.
All right, let's go to the quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. I asked you about Tez Johnson. I think I should ask you about the undersized quarterback as well, because I go to the Senior Bowl and we're doing interviews on the field after one of the practices. And man, I've been around a lot of NFL quarterbacks. I've worked with the Giants since 2007, and he is tiny. He is just not very tall. He's short. But all week, he was the guy that got the ball out on time and pretty accurately over the course of the week. Dylan Gabriel, why, despite maybe the measurements that don't wow people, why do you think he can make it?
Because just like Tez, it was a situation where growing up, he knew he didn't have those measurables, right? He wasn't tall, and he's played behind 6'7" offensive tackles, right? He's played with big offensive linemen, and he's a big window thrower. And you mentioned that accuracy. A lot of it is anticipation on his throws, and he's got really good anticipation. But I think like with Dylan Gabriel, it's not this quarterback class is not the strongest quarterback class ever, but Dylan Gabriel is going to be a guy who's going to stick around in the NFL a long time because of his smarts. And then if you talk to him at the Senior Bowl, he's got this ability to read people and to adapt to whoever he's talking to. You know, at the beginning, it may come off as a little bit cocky. First time I ever talked to him, I asked him how he's doing. He said, elite. And just kind of looked at me. I was like,
I've never heard that before.
And then, you know, he softened up because he's from Hawaii. He's got those island vibes about him where he's really laid back, but every single player on that team connected with him. He's a guy that, you know, in a world of NIL with quarterbacks that drive, you know, Aston Martins and Ferraris at some schools, he drove a minivan. And he drove a minivan not because he has kids, but because he could pick up his receivers and put all of them in the car and say, we're going to throw.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that.
Wow.
And you ask why a guy's going to make it, that's why a guy's going to make it. You know, like that is it right there. He isn't the biggest. He's not the strongest. He has great anticipation on throws. He's very accurate, very smart and quick with getting the ball out. But it's the other stuff. It's the leadership. That's a guy you want around your locker room.
Well, he's tough too. I mean, I think all teammates love guys who are really tough, and he's tough. And I think you have to be if you're going to play this game and be the size that he's at, knowing that these 300-pounders are going to be chasing you all day.
Yeah, and look, he's not afraid to mix it up and defend his teammates either.
Yeah,
like that's one of the things that when he came in, you know, this is a guy who's like 1 year guy, right? You know, you got a hired gun at quarterback, and there was a game, I believe it was against Boise State, maybe in week 2, and it got chippy. He popped up and he got right in the face of. It was kind of a late shot that he got. And he popped up, and somebody was mixing it up with one of his teammates, and he got right into it. And it was like that was the moment where it was like, all right, he's got everybody else's back. And that's kind of the person he is. I love the way he's wired. He is a unique character, and he may lack height. He may lack the downfield, pushing the ball down the field, arm strength. But he's got everything else that you would love to have in a locker room and in your quarterback room.
All right, Dusty, I know we're running out of time, but I need to ask you about the huge guy in that Oregon locker room.
That's the guy that Tez Johnson was hiding behind, getting off of the bus.
Jamari Caldwell, who is a typical right out of Hollywood casting, big, wide-butted nose tackle. This guy is just a massive human being. And you know, look, he's not going to play every down. He's obviously going to be more like a Snacks Harrison was for the Giants and the Jets earlier in you know, some years ago. But you talk about run-stopping downs. This is a guy that you're going to want in there.
He's a plug in the middle. You mentioned wide. That guy takes up some space and some real estate, and he's really strong too. And I think that was the valuable part about canceling the interior of offensive lines was him alongside Derek Harmon. They played really well together. And Jamari is a young man that guy. You talk about the strength in the leverage. He knows how to really play with leverage. He will be a run-stopping type guy. I mean, if they're not going to take away the tush-push from the Eagles, that's a guy you want to have right in the middle of the offensive line because he gets low, he's very strong, and he gets a push backwards at all times. I love Jamari Caldwell in the middle, and his feet are way quicker than you would ever imagine a guy 340 pounds or whatever he's at would be. He's kind of a ballerina the way that he can slide around back and forth too.
All right, and we're right up against it. I got to ask you about Jeffrey Bassa because to me he's another really good defensive player that's a really smart inside linebacker. And it's really tough to go and become a good NFL off-ball linebacker right away just because of how quarterbacks are constantly trying to manipulate that position. Why do you think Bassa's somebody that can make that transition?
He's going to be willing to play anything and everything. That guy is – you want to talk about intelligence? You get a chance to – if you ever get a chance to talk with Jeffrey Bassa, you will enjoy that conversation that you have. He's an articulate, well-spoken young man that, like, he's one of those guys that you wish your daughter would date, right? Your daughter brings home a Jeffrey Bassa, and you're going to be okay with it because he is a handshake, look you in the eye type guy, and he is a do whatever it takes. He came in as a safety to the University of Oregon, and he ended up moving down into middle linebacker because in Dan Lanning's defense, he wants that middle linebacker to play 53 and a third, right? He wants them to be able to go sideline to sideline and play all across the field. So his speed is good enough to be a strong safety type, but he has the instincts and the smarts. He's a quarterback on that defensive side, and he's not the tallest guy in the world. He's not as big. That dude is cut from stone. He is chiseled. He is a hard worker, and that's what's gonna do it. Jeffrey Bassa may not be, a Pro Bowl type inside linebacker, but he could be a Pro Bowl type special teams player if that's the path he's going to go down, right? If he doesn't find that fit on a team, he'll make one for himself, whether it's on the defense or the special teams unit. I cannot say enough about Jeff Bassa and who he is.
Wow. That's a pretty strong endorsement.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for the time. Yeah. This was awesome learning about these great Oregon players. Anyone we missed that you really think we should talk about that we didn't ask you about?
You just want to promote the whole team to the NFL?
Johnny Cornelius out of he's from Harlan, went to Rhode Island, and he's the tackle on the opposite side of Josh Connerly. Late round pick. You need help on that offensive line. He is a guy that is he's gonna stick, and he's gonna find a way to make it in the NFL. Under recruited, another guy who's just a sponge in that O-line room.
Multi-position value or no? Or is he strictly a tackle? Multi-position or strictly a tackle?
I think he's a tackle right now. He's long levers, really tall, but depending on fit and system where he goes, you could try to slide him inside, but he goes at 6'5", 315, and he was a guy that again was one of those long bodies that probably started as a basketball player, and they said, pack this weight on you and see what you got.
It's funny, Dusty. I honestly thought you were going to talk about Jabbar Muhammad, who I think could be a pretty good slot corner. He gets his hand on the football an awful lot too. So,
yes, him too. He's great.
A lot of good players. Now go ahead, Dusty.
No, absolutely. Jabbar's a guy who his size, he is just about the same size as Tez, but you look at everywhere he's been and everywhere he's got defended, he has had success. His size won't determine his success in the NFL. He will be a slot corner. You're right, and I think he has a good one. But this draft class is different. I think it's kind of indicative of what Oregon was this last year. They were some of all the parts, right? They don't have a top 10 pick this year, which they've had top 10 or top 15 guys 5 years in a row. This was a sum of all the parts. They got a lot of draftable guys, a lot of guys that would be good value late in the draft because of the fact that one thing Dan Lanning and his staff do, it's the character side. They want to bring guys in that fit a locker room really well, and that's kind of the common thread between all these guys.
Dusty, awesome stuff. Thank you so much for being with us. Dusty Harrow, Oregon Silent reporter for the Fan 1080 in Portland. Hopefully you keep the rain away. You have spring's coming. Enjoy the weather out there, my friend, and enjoy the draft. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
That's Dusty Harrow. Awesome job. Good stuff out of him there talking about. And he's right. You don't have that superstar Oregon prospect this year, but you got a lot of guys that are good football players.
Well, make it grades, John. I like to say to a lot of people, does the guy have a make it on a 53-man NFL roster? And this draft actually is typical in that fashion.
Yeah.
There are so many guys at so many positions, even some of the weaker positions, so to speak, that are going to make 53s, even though up top you're only looking at Hunter and Carter. Or obviously Ward's going to be up there because he's a QB.
He's also very good.
He is good. He is good. I'm not saying he's not. But, we talk about the two blue chip defensive players. There are so many guys who are going to contribute to NFL teams in this draft.
No, I'm with you. And just and if you look at that Oregon team, I think Derek Harmon's going to be the first one off the board. Really disruptive pass rusher. I think he could go in the teens. Josh Connerly Jr. is going to be the next guy. He's going to go in the 20s. He can be a walk-in day one starting left tackle for you. Jordan Burch, you mentioned it, a good day two defensive end who's physical traits off the charts. Maybe you want a little bit more production, but he's really a good player. You have Terrence Ferguson, who I think is going to be a day two tight end. He's going to be a player that will eventually be a starter. Tez Johnson, we talk about the lack of size and measurables, but man, he gets open. He knows how to play. Jordan James is going to be a running back that can fight for a starting job. Jeffrey Bassa is going to play linebacker. Caldwell, the run-stopping defensive tackle. It's a team. It's a bunch of guys that can help NFL football teams.
It's a really, really good program they've got out there, and there are so many likable players. And look, good for them, right?
Yeah.
Good for them, because as we talked about, we usually don't have a long list coming out of Oregon.
That's
but we
true.
did this year.
All right, let's get to our calls here, Paul. But first, a reminder, go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. Draft season is up there. As I mentioned yesterday, Tony Pauline and I go through our top 10s at all the offensive positions in this year's draft class. We have Mike Renner coming your way from
Should
CBS
be up
Sports
around 2:30 or 3.
About 2:30 or 3 today, so check that out. Tomorrow we're going to have somebody else. We got a bunch. I already have like 3 or 4 set up, and I'm recording a couple for next week. So we are rocking and rolling as we move forward here with the Giants Huddle podcast. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform, giants.com/podcast, or just go to the Giants app. All right, let's go to the phone calls and say what's up to Dave in Michigan. He will lead us off. Hi, Dave.
Hey, guys. Thanks for the great work.
What's up?
So I had said a couple of weeks ago that I really wanted Winston as a safe,
Well, he's not safe.
A safe choice.
Okay, well, you got him.
For the quarterback room. And then I said I much prefer Wilson
Well, you got
to
both.
Rodgers.
So there you go.
So my question is, how do I go about invoicing Mr. Mara for my intelligence on these issues?
Yes, because I'm sure that's where they got the ideas
Listening
from.
to the podcast and watching my tweets.
I'm sure that's where they got all the ideas from, Dave.
All right, Dave. So who's the pick at 3? You want to get your crystal ball out? Who's the pick at 3? Since you're on a roll.
I'm glad you asked. Because if he's there is absolutely no argument that they have to take Hunter. And here's the reason. We talk about how he's a unique player and all of that, but let me rephrase the case for Travis Hunter another way. For 5 years, we have in one player two-way depth. That is unprecedented. So if, God forbid, Malik Neighbors goes down for 4 or 5 games, hey, guys, don't sweat it. We got Travis Hunter. If one of our cornerbacks goes down for 4 or 5 games, no problem, guys. We got Travis Hunter. I mean, that is so unprecedented and value. It is off the chart, no question, that you draft Travis Hunter if he's there at 3. That's one thing. Now, I also want to say something about the quarterbacks. All of this talk about quarterbacks and how they're going to get pulled ahead into the first round. The third round guys pulled ahead to the second round.
Yeah, it happens every year.
Let me offer a voice of reason here. We could go through all the rounds without drafting a developmental quarterback, and here's why. We've got Russell Wilson. We've got Jameis Winston. Our developmental quarterback, now I will say this, I will accept the idea, the notion that Brian Daboll is a better judge of quarterback horseflesh than I am, okay? I will yield that to the head coach of the New York Jets.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Tommy DeVito is our developmental quarterback, and he's won games for us. So instead of overdrafting Jackson Dart or the kid from Louisville or the kid from Syracuse or something like that, how about this? How about we take the absolute best top-rated pick that is available to us when we pick, and we beef up the rest of the team that way, rather than taking a flyer in the top of the first or the bottom of the second on a guy we don't rate that high. So that's my thing. Now, I have one more question for you, and this is informational.
Yeah.
And I just don't know the answer. And here it is. If we drafted a developmental quarterback and we're nervous about putting him on the 53, let's say we go into the season with DeVito, Wilson, and Winston, but we drafted somebody in the 3rd or 4th round. I realize that if you put them on the practice squad, you make them vulnerable to other teams.
No. Dave, time out. You're not putting a quarterback you drafted around 3 or 4 on the practice squad. Tommy DeVito would go on the practice squad.
Actually, he'd get
okay,
claimed.
So even if you put Tommy DeVito on, okay, here's my question. So if the Bengals claim a quarterback or any player that we have on the practice squad, does the team have any time to react? In other words, okay, the Bengals want our guy in the practice squad. We have to move him. If we want to keep him, we have to move him onto the 53 immediately and put, and knock somebody else.
Dave, I can cut you off there, Dave.
And thank you for the call, Dave.
If a
Appreciate
practice squad player gets, again, he's got to be on the practice squad already. If he's waived first, which he has to be, and he gets claimed on waivers, he doesn't have a choice.
And by the way, he also does not have to sign.
Now, if he gets through waivers and goes to the practice squad, he can turn down a team's offer to jump teams and get promoted.
And that's happened before.
It absolutely has. It happened with Davis Webb. He turned down an offer from the Miami Dolphins to go to the active 53, stayed with the Giants, and the following week the Giants let him start the last game of the season against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's absolutely happened before. So you're talking about a little bit of a technicality, because if the player is waived, which you have to be first before you go to the practice squad, you don't get a choice. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, to your other point, I agree with you, and so does Joe Shane when he said you can't force the quarterback. If the value isn't there where you pick, Joe Shane told the people the other day at the owners' meeting, Pearson was there, he said you don't force it. So I agree with that theory. Joe Shane agrees with it as well. But if there is one there and they want to take a developmental quarterback, they're going to do it.
And there are levels to forcing.
Yes.
There's one thing.
No doubt.
If you're picking 32nd and, he's the 40th player, but your 37th player is still on the board and there's only like 2 spots separating them and you pick the 40th player instead, whatever, who cares?
I don't know that that's...
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't pick a 4th-round quarterback in the 2nd round, for example.
Right.
But, like, if you have a guy as your 45th best player and you're sitting there at 34 and you like him as a developmental quarterback and you know he's not going to be there in the next round, you move him up 10 spots, all right. That I would not have a problem with. That's fine.
I think your other point, and I don't really mean any disrespect to Tommy DeVito, but I think he's a number 3 in the NFL. I think we saw that in his 2 years he's been with the Giants. He is a number 3.
And look,
he's a solid number 3, but that's what he is.
And Paul, you get back to then who is your quarterback in 2026? Like, that's a thing.
No, I understand.
You're not just drafting for this year, you're drafting for the future. And those 2 guys are on short-term contracts.
I would suspect that at some point in the draft, they will find somebody who is not a force, and they'll take one. I think that's likely.
Teams are going to have these quarterbacks rated in all different ways. So there's a chance that the Giants might have a quarterback higher than the rest of the league, and they might not have to force it in one of these rounds. Like, I don't know how that's going to go. So we'll have to wait and see. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Jim in New Jersey. He wants to talk about Travis Hunter. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, great to talk to both of you. Although it's weird, kind of both my points are sort of like Dave's, but they're, hopefully a little bit more kind of nuanced.
Sure.
I'll get to the 2 points are, I want to talk to you, John, specifically about Hunter as a receiver, and then the both of you, I want to talk a little bit about the another take on the developmental quarterback thing. So let me just say quickly up front, last time I spoke to you, I also was in that when it was kind of the time when there was this frenzy for quarterback, at the end of the season. And the last thing I said to you was, just pick good players. And I really have to say, Joe Shane has won me over. Like, I was pretty down on Joe, with I had to do the long, kind of monologue about things I didn't like in the fall and stuff about players. But I don't know if he's a great drafter, but I will say as an executive, I have a lot of respect for him because you see how, like, the NFL world has pushed the Giants to take Shedeur Sanders. You can just, everywhere you turn, the Browns, they don't need Shedeur Sanders. Oh, no. The Giants, they got to have him.
Now, Jim, in fairness, I feel like I've seen Sanders push to both teams, to be honest with you. I think people are very anxious to put a quarterback with both those teams.
Especially since we got Wilson, that's definitely increased. But I'm just saying that this is a compliment for Joe. I feel like, as an executive, he's made a lot of smart decisions to put himself in a position on sides of the ball where he's not desperate, yet in terms of the draft, and he also, I don't feel, was all that desperate in the contract. So anyway, just good offseason. Hopefully it pans out. Joe Shane. I want to talk about, obviously in a dream world, you get Carter. you get at 34, someone like Williams from Ohio State, and now your defense is psychotic. But assuming the Browns take Carter and you're going to have the chance to get Hunter, I don't quite agree with Dave about the idea that it's an immediate slam dunk with Hunter just dropping him in either spot. First off, it's just hard to be a quarterback, especially a 180-pound quarterback coming from the Big 12 to the NFL. He's great physical talent, but he's 180 pounds. And also from the receiving standpoint, Daboll runs a very complex offense. And, one of the things people said is that one of the great things about having Darius Slayton is he makes sure that, Malik Neighbors knows where to line up. So my question to you, and I'm hoping I can still also ask both of you about another point about the developmental quarterback.
Yeah, that's fine.
But Mike, John, you do such a great job with the draft breakdown stuff. I mean, I'm just loving it. But when you, the NFL has comped Hunter to Devontae Smith, who I loved, and it killed me we didn't get him. But he played in the FBC, and while he was super skinny, he was a craftsman.
Jim, honestly,
awesome route runner.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I haven't heard that comp, but as in terms of the way they play the position.
For him on the NFL draft, it says, for his receiver side, it says Devontae Smith. And what I'm saying is I think that, makes sense. Like when I watched the BYU playoff game that horrified me about Shador, but when I saw Hunter, I was like, holy smoke. But I guess I'm asking you, John, is let's imagine a situation where we draft Hunter and he provides sort of psychic pressure on Tay Banks to hustle or do whatever he's got to do to be at least a great QB2, and he's depth on the defensive side. But let's say that, unfortunately, there's still struggles, getting off the line for someone like a Jalen Hyatt. So Daboll wants to use Hunter as a primary weapon. When you've looked at the tape of him as a receiver, what's your take on him? I've heard stuff like he's not a great route runner. I wonder, I've heard that the offense was fairly, not simplistic. It wasn't like, Lane Kiffin, and it was, Pat Shermer was a professional, head coach and offensive lineman. But what's your take about imagining Hunter as a receiver? I mean, he's the Biletnikoff Award winner. If you put him in Brian Daboll's system, is he? How would that work? What do you think of him that way? And then I just want to throw it to both of you guys. But one more thing about developmental quarterback. But what do you think about him as a receiver, John?
I think that's a great question.
He's a generational talent. Like you look at him, you imagine you're just drafting him as a receiver.
No, I got you. No, I'm with you.
All right, so I'm trying to find where I have my Travis Hunter report in my book here, and I guess I have it in my cornerback. So let me bring that up. So yes, a lot of the things you said are right on, Jim. To be honest with you, and stand by. This will be a long answer. Then you can ask your quarterback development question afterwards. Hang out.
That's right.
Yes, his receiver stuff at Colorado is not that advanced, but there are a lot of layers to this. Even though Pat Shermer was there, they don't run a ton of route concepts, all right? So he runs a lot of jump ball stuff and basic deep in cuts and stuff like that. There's not a huge variety on his routes. Here's the trick, and I found this watching his cornerback tape too. What did playing 130 plays a game do to him from a running perspective? Like, a lot of these plays, he looks tired. And I'm like, I can't blame him for that. He's never off the damn field. So I don't know what he would look like if he just played wide receiver all the time. That's fair. I also don't believe, in my humble opinion, that he would, and we'll see, maybe he'll run tomorrow at the Colorado Showcase. Is that what they're calling it? I don't think they're calling it a pro day. They're calling it a showcase. My guess is that he's not going to run a 40-yard dash. And my guess, the reason he's not going to run a 40-yard dash is because he would not run a sub 4.45. I think he is closer to a 4.48, 4.50 type of player, which is fine, by the way. Some of the best receivers in the league run in the low 4.5s. That's not a problem. So the stuff that he's awesome at is just catching the football, his ball skills, his hands, his body control. He might not be, and I think he's an explosive athlete. Like, his jumps will probably be really good, right? Like, he can get up to jump to get the football. His acceleration, his burst, even if his long speed might. But again, maybe I don't think his long speed is that great because he's playing 130 plays a game and he's just not running full speed. So again, it's hard for me to figure this stuff out.
But do I think he is an advanced route runner where you can plug him in? He's going to do all these nuanced wide receiver things?
Nope.
No. But he is so unbelievably gifted from an explosion, ball skills, body control, fluidity standpoint that I think he will be an effective player right away. You can make the argument that Ted McMillan right away is going to be a better wide receiver than Travis Hunter at the pro level. I can make that argument. And I don't think it's a bad one. So I'm just going to read off my scouting report real quick. And this is what I have for him in terms of strengths at wide receiver. Jumping ability, elite acceleration, can contort body to make tough contested catches, uses hands and body to separate at the end of the route with the ball in the air to create late separation, elusive to turn himself into a runner right after the catch, very sudden versus press coverage, finds open areas in the zone, especially on broken plays, so he's good when Shedeur starts to scramble. Good deceleration on hitches, stronger than his 180-pound frame. Draws a bunch of defensive pass interference and penalties, explosive. This is what my weaknesses were when I looked him at a wide receiver. Not elite as a route runner, limited route tree. Is he always running top speed? What is his top speed? Dangerous after a catch, but doesn't break many tackles. But again, he's only 180 pounds. So I still have him as a top 10 level player in terms of a receiver. So I have Ted McMillan in that area. Actually, I think just outside the top 10. But so yes, with Malik Neighbors there and Slayton there and Wanda Robinson there, I think you could plug him in right away and give him the type of routes that he could immediately succeed.
Absolutely, you could.
And if you train him, and look, this is my hot take the other day when I was on at the end of the show with Lance Paul, that if the Giants draft Travis Hunter, I think they might use him more as a wide receiver than as a corner in year one. Just based on what the roster looks like.
I don't know if I said that to you or Matt, but I said the same thing.
Did you really?
Early.
Yeah, I don't remember you saying that to me.
Early in the season,
and
I think he'll make more impact as a receiver.
And I think with Russell Wilson here and Brian Dable trying to get the most out of this offense as possible, it's going to be tough for him to not use him as a wideout. And considering you have Drew Phillips inside, you have Paulson Adebo outside, you think you're going to get better play out of Tay Banks with a new defensive secondary coach. That's my gut feel with Hunter right now in terms of how I think it's going.
There may be more chances for him to get on the field as a receiver, as a rookie. I absolutely agree with that. And he can make impact plays with only a few snaps. But there's one other item I want to throw onto your list because I think that's a very good list. It's a very complete list. He has an unbelievable ability to attack the ball when it's in the air.
If I didn't say that, I meant to. Yeah,
throw
he's
that
tremendous,
onto your list.
Tremendous on jump balls. Correct. Absolutely.
Throw that onto your list.
I said ball skills. That's what I meant when I said ball skills. Correct.
Because and it's on both sides.
Well, that's why he's such a good corner.
Defense and offense.
Yes.
When that ball is coming to his vicinity, it doesn't matter if he's on offense or defense, it's coming down into that box. He decides it's mine, and he will get it. He will attack it. And I'll be honest with you, the Giants receivers over the last decade have not had a lot of guys who will really attack the ball.
Burris is really the last guy that was great at that. And Nix. No, Hakeem Nicks.
No,
I should say Hakeem Nicks. Hakeem Nicks was great at it. Hakeem Nicks was great at it.
And Victor wasn't bad at it either.
That wasn't his game, though.
No, but it was not his. It was not a primary trait for Victor, but he wasn't bad at it. But that, to me, is the one thing that just really stuck out because we're not talking about a guy who's 6'1", 6'2".
He plays a lot bigger than his size would dictate. He actually did measure over 6 foot at the combine, which was
did they give him they didn't give him 6'1", though, did they?
Well, it's not giving him. They actually do measure him.
All right, you know what I mean. Anyway, that would be just the one item that I can't say enough about how he attacks the ball. So anyway,
okay. So what's he came in just over 6 foot, like 6 foot, I think, in 3/8 of an inch or something like that. Okay, so what's your quarterback developmental question?
If I could just say, John, that was terrific, you guys, because I agree that his hands are what I really love about Hunter. I think that's his great trait.
But again, Jim, I stress this: if you get him, Jim, real quick, I stress this: if you get him into camp and you tell him you're a wide receiver. He could be an elite route runner by the end of camp. That's how good he can be.
Can I tell you one reason why? I think I know the reason why. I believe, and this is my opinion. I've heard other people say it, but my opinion is that the Colorado offense was as simple as it was on the route trees because Deion Sanders wanted to make sure that Pat Shurmur made the offense as good as it could be for Shedeur Sanders.
I think it was the offensive line.
Okay? And the offensive line certainly was an inhibitor.
I think it was.
There's no question about that. I think the line was an inhibitor. But I also believe the combination of let's make sure that we accentuate Shedeur's skills as much as possible. Let's kind of pare down this playbook.
Because obviously Pat Shurmur knows how to do more. He was in the league forever. Correct.
Yes. And that's why when you look at the Colorado tape, you're saying, geez, I know Pat Shurmur has more in his bag than that. So I think it was the combination of keeping it simple for Sanders, and also the offensive line wasn't really good enough to hold up for the full playbook.
I think Shedeur's a pretty mentally sharp guy. I don't think that's, for me, I would be surprised by that. All right, Jim, what's your quarterback developmental question?
So, so anyway, what I was going to ask you about the developmental quarterback is this. I was listening to you guys talk with the Alabama, the Alabama process.
Yes.
So they talked about, my feeling broadly about, I'm again kind of with Dave in the sense that, I always think kind of the ghost of Cooper Beebe. Who is that interior offensive lineman you'd love to have, but you watch him slip away because you pick your developmental quarterback, and he's, I don't want, I'm not really sold on a lot of these second halves. That's just me. I don't want to get into a debate. I just really want to get to what you guys think about this idea, though. So I was listening to the Alabama thing, and man alive, the only quarterback, I take a seventh rounder or something. You want to do a Milton or a Purdy or something, 5th, 6th, 7th, that's fine. But the only quarterback that I would consider at 99 or below, not 34, I want like Williams or better to pair up with Dex at 34. But it's 65 or 99. And if I couldn't find the running back I wanted, the guy who is interesting to me is definitely Jalen Milroe. Because imagine him as like a super Taysom Hill for the Giants.
I would pick him at either one of those spots, Jim. I'm with you.
And if you turn him, if you convince the league he's going to hit the line enough, like he's going to run, and then you can let him drop beautiful, deep passes that could be, to me, a guy who immediately have a real impact rather than a guy sitting on the bench. So I think Milroe, especially if he was somehow Sam Howell, and you could jump up from 99 by giving up some stuff, or even maybe, 65-ish. That is interesting. I don't know if he's going to be there, and I'd only do it if he was there. I wouldn't do it at 34. But to me, then you get something that can really possibly impact this year.
No, Jim, good point.
And then you see what you get later.
Thank you for the call, Jim. Look, and I'm with you. Brian Dable will put a package. If they do draft Jalen Milroe,
he's a gadget quarterback.
By the way, I would, if he's there at the top of the third round, I would do that. I think it's worth it because I think, again, not only is he a developmental guy, his running skill is special.
That is true.
And Brian Dable knows how to scheme things up for a running quarterback. We've seen that, whether it was Josh Allen or Daniel Jones. So I would have zero problem with that. And if I had to move up 1 or 2 spots into the back end of the second round, I would have no problem with that either.
I don't think that I would, but I understand the point. I think it certainly has some validity to it.
Yeah. And again, I think the real thing that tips the scales for me is that he apparently is just an A-plus human being, just a great kid. And usually when you're a great person and a great kid, there's a good chance you have of getting better. He's going to work his butt off and do whatever it takes to get better. So much like with Jalen Hurts, but again, Hurts was a much more advanced passer than Milroe was when he came out. Look at his last year at Oklahoma, all the yards he threw for. Just look at that.
Yep.
He had his faults, but he did have production.
Yes, he did.
I think you bet on those types of guys to figure it out, just because that's the type of guys that they are.
Well, because they got the compensatory at 99, the third round would be an opportunity for you if you wanted to take a little bit of a gamble and a little bit of a reach.
If I had
you have 2 picks in the round.
If I had to move my 5th rounder to move up 10 spots to get him, I would be okay with that.
You mean to 88? 89? From 99 to 80?
89? No. I mean from 64.
Oh.
From 65 to 58.
To move into the bottom of the
second. If you had to get him, I would.
Wow.
If all the other guys are gone, like yours is gone and Dart is gone and Shook is gone, and you think one of those teams, would you be shocked if the Ravens took him? Would there be a better backup to Lamar Jackson?
Not at all.
I mean, my gosh, how could that be more perfect? Or the Bills as a backup to Josh Allen?
Okay?
My goodness.
The Steelers had Cordell Stewart, the original Slash.
Correct.
Just remember that.
Or how about what if the Commanders want a developmental backup?
I know.
You put in with Jaden Daniels, I mean, forget it. There's a lot of fits there. So if you have to move up ahead of some of those teams to try to grab him, I would be okay with that.
Because of the fact that you have a bunch of good teams who have established quarterbacks who might just think that a gadget quarterback could be an additional spark to their offense.
And could become something one day.
Yeah, they could afford to do that.
The Eagles selected Jalen Hurts with a second-round pick
Right.
when Carson Wentz was coming off an MVP caliber
you're
season.
absolutely correct. And
that's what good teams do.
That turned out to be a tremendous windfall for them.
100%.
And trust me, at the time, they didn't think Wentz was going to flop out.
They weren't drafting Jalen Hurts to start for them.
No. He was going to be a package quarterback.
And then they're backup long term.
I know.
And then if he develops into something great, and well, great
and
for them.
And that's very interesting because that could be a spot where Milroe does go a little bit higher because someone sees him as a package quarterback.
Right. Let's wrap things up with Jason and New Haven. Jason, I know you usually have 6 points. You're going to have to limit it here. We're past 1:30.
6,
Go ahead.
huh? Oh, man.
Okay, how you guys doing?
We're good.
Hi.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. I know I got to get rushed off, but a few things. I know everybody's talking about. I'm one of those fans who I'm fine with whoever the general manager takes because, like I've said before, numerous times, the only scouts that I care who opinion is the Giant scouts upstairs. So I know everybody likes to talk to the draft gurus, draft experts, which is fine. But here's my thing: I'm good with 3 players, like I've told you guys about. To me, it's Shador, Travis, or Carter. Carter gives me reservation because we just don't know about the injury thing.
Yeah.
With his foot and his shoulder, so that's kind of a tricky. And I'm sure they'll do their due diligence. Travis, to me, I'm not as high on as everybody else, but if the Giants took him, fine. You know what I mean? I'm a root for him while he's on the team. I know I've made my statements about Shador. I don't need to keep going about it. I think if he's there, I think he's the pick. I think what he did, I think people don't realize. Now, he's not a perfect player, but a lot of times when you're picking these players, especially when you're picking number 3 overall, to me, you either go quarterback or line of scrimmage player. And that's just my opinion. And Shador, it's hard because I don't think people realize how bad his offensive line was. They were a sieve. I know people talk about what the Giants have been.
No, it was bad. It was bad.
They were bad. And my thing is, if playing quarterback for the Giants is such a unique, amongst all the teams, you could say Dallas maybe, Green Bay maybe, but playing quarterback for the Giants is such a, how do I say it? It's tricky, right? Because not only do you have to be good on the field, but you have to be good in the community.
Yeah, Jason, I don't think there's any worry about Shador handling the New York spotlight. He'll be fine with that.
No.
Right. So I think he's my pick. If he's there, I know everybody won't agree with that, and that's fine. Everybody has their opinion.
Yep.
Second point, the D-line. I'm with you, Paul. There is a little gap. Mason Graham, quote unquote, is the preemptive number 1 tackle in the draft, and really argue with that point. But man, there's a lot of good tackles in this draft, man. I just don't see the Giants picking them. And I'm not saying you guys are stating that they will, but I just don't see them taking Mason Graham. If I'm taking a defensive tackle that high, he has to have a lot of those toolsy traits you guys talk about, right?
Agreed.
So when I say toolsy traits, to me, and I know Dexter wasn't taken that high. He was taken at 17 the year we took him. But to me, he looks like a number 3 overall defensive tackle.
You're going to want Cortez Kennedy, right?
Well, and by the way, Mason Graham's never going to test. So he's undersized and he didn't test.
I know.
That to me is a worry.
I know. I get it.
And that's the problem.
Truth be told, I don't make predictions about what Joe Shane's going to do. But as I said to John last year when I said I would take a Dunze, but I think Joe Shane and the Giants are going to take Neighbors, I'm going to say the same thing to you now. I would take Mason Graham if I had that choice at that point under those conditions. I don't think the Giants would.
Right. And then one point, and I'll leave off the air. You can answer it off the air. I have a little, I don't want to say problem with it, but I'm a little curious by this. And just give me a few seconds. So last year, the quarterback out of Washington. I forgot the young man.
Jaden Daniels. Oh, you mean Michael Penix?
Michael Penix.
Yes.
Michael Penix. Okay. I never thought we would take him that high. I think he was a good college quarterback that could potentially be a good NFL quarterback. And he showed some moments last year in his spot duty when he did play.
Sure.
But here's my thing. Last year, I heard a lot of draft analysts and people on social media, TV. Oh, you can't take, they was down in Michael Penix because of the injuries. But now all of a sudden this year, I see a lot of, and I'm not saying you two are doing it. I'm just saying just in the landscape of the NFL draft, Tyler Shuck's name is coming up the board. Tyler Shuck. And my thing is, okay, people downed Michael Penix last year for having all those injuries. Mind you, he did take Washington pretty far, because he beat my Longhorns that year. He came before he came out.
Well, Jason, what I'll say real quick, and I completely understand your point where you're coming from. No one has Tyler Shuck as a first-round player here.
No.
I think the question with Penix last year is, would you draft him like in the top 15?
Right.
No one's saying you draft Tyler Shuck in the top 15. I think you're talking about Tyler Shuck as a second-round guy, and most people were talking about Michael Penix as an end-of-the-first-round guy. So I think most people, including myself, would select Michael Penix before they select Tyler Shuck. I would select Michael Penix long before I select Tyler Shuck. But I didn't think the tape either, just for the record, made him a top 15 type of pick last year. That's it.
Right, and then the last thing, you guys had the Oregon guy on.
Yeah.
And they have a few players I like, and one guy that intrigued me was Jordan Burch. I've watched him a few times, and I'm not saying I'm a draft expert. I did play college ball, so I know a little something. And to me, his name piqued my interest. Now I don't know where he'll go. But to me, he projects as a 3 technique in the league. He's a big guy. I know they had him playing edge in Oregon, but at 6'5", I think you mentioned he was like 290.
Yep.
I mean, that's a big edge. I mean, I wonder him and Caldwell. Him and Caldwell really intrigued me because if you don't want Mason Graham, there's a lot of talent, and Jordan Burch to me just screams. I would love to see what Andre Pattinson did with a mold of play like that. At 6'6", 295, he is your prototype 3 technique. Jamari Caldwell, he is your put him next there on 3rd and 1, and let's play ball.
Yeah,
so
I get it.
I wanted to see what you guys think of this D-line class. I know Mason Graham, like you said, Paul, is in a different tier.
Yep.
But to me, the tier isn't a canyon. The tier is like maybe a paper clip.
I hear you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jason. Good stuff.
I like the one thing that he just said, which is actually appropriate to this conversation. Andre Patterson. Too many times we forget about that. He is an outstanding defensive line coach. And for some of these defensive tackles who are in that very large second tier, because it is an outstanding defensive line class, God only knows what Andre Patterson's going to do with any one of these guys.
Yeah,
he could make them really good.
A guy like Burch,
I think he's an edge. I think he's a defensive end.
He hasn't, like, the physical traits. You have not seen the production with it.
No.
He's one of those guys where he just hasn't put it all together yet. But, yeah, I like to see Andre Patterson get his hands on him. I mean, there are a number of guys. Like, what could Andre Patterson do with Deion Walker? I'll do a little tease for the Giants huddle later today. So, Mike Renner was talking about Deion Walker. I've talked about him here, right? Mm-hmm. On his 2023 tape, I thought he looked like a top 10 pick. This year, he looks like a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Mike Renner told me, an agent told me, he played with a broken back this year.
Broken back? B-A-C-K?
That's correct. And when you watch him on tape, you're like, he's playing really high. Well, you know why he might be playing high? Because he can't bend.
Wow.
Because he has a broken back. Now, again, that's from an agent. Don't know if that's true.
That
that's
didn't come out at the combine. We never heard anything about it. It did not.
Now, remember, sometimes you get these little small bones that you bring back there, and there's not like...
Oh, man.
Still, whatever the case might be. Like you have him, Kenneth Grant's another guy. Walter Nolan is a smaller 3-tech that can get up the field. Darius Alexander out of Toledo is somebody that could be a top of the 3rd round type of guy. TJ Sanders out of South Carolina could be a top of the 3rd round type of guy. there's a lot. Omar Norman, a lot of somebody that I like as an athletic pass rusher.
See, but all those guys are different than Burch in that Burch, his first spot should be pass rushing.
Well, I'm not talking about
defensive
Burch.
end.
He wanted us to talk about the defensive tackle.
I thought he was saying that Burch should be a 3 technique.
Well,
because
he
fits in with
said
these
that
guys.
too, but he wanted.
I don't think that's true.
I think you can go either way. I agree with you. I think his length allows him to play outside, but he was asking about the defensive tackle class.
Yes.
But again, and then you have the bigger guys like Joshua Farmer, like Alfred Collins.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the bigger C.J. West, the Jordan Phillips. Those are more of your, run stuffing guys. Well, Jordan Phillips can get upfield a little bit.
Yes, he can.
But look, there's a lot of different types of guys you can choose from here that are going to play different roles for you. That's why, to Paul's point, if you want to pick one bigger run stuffer and then an upfield pass rusher,
Give me two.
You can do 2.
Give me 2.
And that's fine.
There's enough.
Like pick one in the third, one in the fifth.
There's
You're
enough.
rocking and rolling.
Yeah, I'm all in on that.
I'm not sure you're going to get the guy in round 2, though. I don't think Derek Harmon and Grant are getting to you.
No.
So I think you'd have to pick Tyleek Williams. And we had this debate with a caller a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is not. He looks like Dalvin Tomlinson to me, where you're not getting a lot of pass rush, but you're getting a really good football player. That's what he looks like. He looks like Dalvin Tomlinson.
I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago that would be, I think it's realistic that you can get him there.
Right.
And I would have no problem with that selection.
So the question is, would you rather wait till round 3 and pick a guy with a little bit more pass rush upside? I don't know. It's a good question.
I don't know.
It's a good question. Anyway, good stuff, Paul.
Yeah.
You and SciTac tomorrow.
Michigan.
We have Sam Webb, our great guy who covers the Michigan Wolverines, coming on. He always picks out a couple sleepers for us every year. Make sure you check that out. And again,
Mason Graham's not a sleeper.
He is not. Go check out the John Settle podcast as well. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmelk, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.